The day after, downtown Manhattan, a silent field of ash, rubble, debris.
The glass just flamed, exploded out the front of the World Trade Center. Glass flew everywhere.
Where yesterday there was fire and chaos, sparked by a surreal sight.
It was a jet. I couldn't believe my eyes watching it.
That began one of the darkest days in U.S. history, as hijacked planes became guided missiles. A day of panic.
A second airplane, a 727, just ran into the building.
Destruction, terror.
Where do I go? Do I go home?
Two symbols of American might crushed in a terrorist onslaught.
I mean, you just cannot overemphasize how many completely innocent people were just, destroyed by this.
Coordinated attacks at our military and financial centers, a virtual declaration of war.
Oh, no!
Airport security outsmarted.
The FAA has blood on its hands.
A death toll that will climb into the thousands.
There are over 1,000 rescue workers trying to get into the buildings, trying to find people, trying to search for people.
A nation forever scarred, its people outraged and afraid.
I am mad. I am very, very mad.
An attack on America.
And now, a Deadline Discovery special, Attack on America, the day after. For Len Cannon, here's Hoda Kotb.
The world's most famous skyline and the nation's sense of security changed forever. The Twin Towers of the World Trade Center and thousands of American lives simply gone. Once a symbol of the economic capital of the world, now a reminder of the most horrifying and devastating attack ever against the United States. Bob McEwen has the latest on a national tragedy unlike any other of our generation.
One day after hell was unleashed on New York City, Lower Manhattan looks like it's caught in a nuclear winter. Ruins still smolder. Grit covers debris. Steel girders are strewn in the streets, remnants of a world that simply vanished on a sunny September morning, along with untold lives. A soldier-turned-statesman talks of a war that must be fought and won.
We're mad. We were assaulted. But our spirit wasn't assaulted, and our fighting spirit was not assaulted, so we want to respond. You don't attack America like this and get away with it.
Amid the shock and the horror, a faint glimmer of hope. At least 6 victims pulled alive from the rubble. There may be others still trapped inside the collapsed remains. Reports of cell phone calls from a few survivors pleading for help.
We do know there are people in the building that are alive. We know that for a fact. We're very hopeful that there are pockets where there are people, not only the ones that we know about, but hopefully others.
Elsewhere, grim scenes, grim words. The president puts the death toll in the thousands after terrorists, some armed with knives, cruelly turned 4 commercial airliners into guided missiles. This is how the attack on America unfolded. 8:42 a.m. In the city's financial district, the heart of American commerce, thousands of people are already at their desks. The first attack plane, an American Airlines flight out of Boston, slams into the North Tower of the World Trade Center.
The glass just flamed, exploded out the front of the World Trade Center. Glass flew everywhere.
At first, it looks like a terrible aviation disaster.
And we have a breaking news story to tell you about. Apparently, a plane has just crashed into the World Trade Center here in New York City.
On the streets below, shock and confusion. People streaming out of buildings, bloody clothing and body parts scattered all around.
A lady had a big gash on her head, so it was people stampeding one over top of another.
Emergency crews rushed to the southern tip of Manhattan. For many, the same thought. Could it really be happening again? In 1993, the same building was hit by a truck bomb. 6 people died in that attack. 1,000 were injured. But very early on, it's clear that the toll this time would be much higher. Less than 20 minutes after the first attack, a second plane, a United Airlines flight hijacked from Boston, takes aim at the Trade Center's South Tower. It's 9:03 a.m.
Oh, another one just hit. Something else just hit. A very large plane just flew directly over my building, and there's been another collision. Can you see it? I can see it on this shot.
Live cameras trained on the first stricken tower capture the second explosion. to be replayed again and again.
And here it comes right there.
The impact, devastating. The airliner driving through the skin of the huge tower, a rain of glass, concrete, and terror.
It's like this unbelievable ball of fire. And the whole street, which is now awakened, everyone's like, whoa. People start crying, people start running.
As many as 20,000 people may have been inside the two 110-story buildings. Eyewitnesses say desperate people were jumping from the burning skyscrapers.
But there were people falling out of the sky.
New York is paralyzed. Tunnels and bridges linking the city shut down. Subways closed. Cell phones overload. 9:29 a.m. President Bush in Florida speaks to the nation for the first time.
Terrorism against our nation will not stand.
11 minutes later, 9:40 a.m., another attack, the most audacious yet. A third hijacked plane, an American Airlines flight out of Washington Dulles, crashes into the western part of the Pentagon, another direct hit. 9:43 a.m. Amid concern the White House could be a target, President Bush boards Air Force One, bound for a special secure command post at a military base. Later media reports will say the White House and Air Force One were the intended targets of the plane that crashed in Pennsylvania. At 9:49, for the first time in U.S. history, the Federal Aviation Administration closes all domestic airports, shutting down the nation's airspace. In the grim new world, hundreds of passenger planes flying over the country are now potential terrorist weapons.
The Federal Aviation Administration ordered all airports closed, and all planes which were in the air were directed to land at the nearest airport.
Rescue workers in New York and Washington confront a disaster of immense proportions. In New York, local hospitals begin filling up. Urgent calls going out to every available surgeon and nurse. Long lines of people outside waiting to donate blood.
It was a war zone. It was unbelievable.
There's more to come. At 9:59 a.m., the Trade Center's South Tower, the building that took the second hit, begins to crumble. In a matter of seconds, the skyscraper is gone. At 10 a.m., news of another passenger plane in trouble. Someone on United Airlines Flight 93, traveling from Newark, New Jersey to San Francisco, calls 911 and reports a hijacking. Then an explosion and silence. The plane crashes here, some 80 miles outside Pittsburgh. There are 45 people on board. At 10:30, the north tower of the Trade Center also collapses into a cloud of smoke and ash. In all, 266 people aboard 4 hijacked planes are killed. Among the casualties, conservative commentator Barbara Olson, wife of U.S. Solicitor General Theodore Olson. Just before her plane hit the Pentagon, she called her husband on her cell phone, saying, "Can you believe this? We're being hijacked." Then the phone went dead. Also killed was David Angel, the award-winning creator and executive producer of the TV show Frasier. The list of missing, presumed dead, grows. Officials say more than 100 people died at the Pentagon. In New York City, hundreds of firefighters and police officers are unaccounted for. Mayor Giuliani is defiant.
The city of New York in the United States of America is much stronger than any group of barbaric terrorists.
A sense of alarm spreads across the country. Troops standing guard as national landmarks are shut down. Fighter jets patrol the skies. Authorities struggle to deal with multiple disasters.
First of all, Chief, do we have any idea of how many people are in there?
We have no idea. Now, as you know, it was pretty much rush hour time that this took place this morning, so the numbers we don't know yet. We tried to get almost everybody out that we could early on.
10,000 people in each tower would typically be in there on a normal business day, and we get about another 5,000 visitors during the course of the entire day. So by 8:30, 9 o'clock, the building should have been full.
New Yorkers are struggling too.
And now they both collapsed. There's no more World Trade Centers.
At 1:12 p.m., President Bush, now at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana, again speaks to the nation.
Freedom itself was attacked this morning by a faceless coward. And freedom will be defended. I want to reassure the American people that the full resources of the federal government are working to assist local authorities to save lives and to help the victims of these attacks. Make no mistake, the United States will hunt down and punish those responsible for these cowardly acts.
Moments after his speech, the president reboards Air Force One for a then undisclosed location. In New York, the army of rescue workers and volunteers continues to search in the wreckage of Lower Manhattan.
You guys going back?
Yes.
It's our job. You worried about that other tower?
Personally, I am. I got fellow officers that might be trapped. I'm not trying to be a hero, but I think if you were in this position, you'd do the same thing.
Thousands evacuate Manhattan, trudging across bridges on foot. The city seems more shell-shocked than terrified. About 3 p.m., President Bush lands at Offutt Air Force Base outside Omaha. From an underground bunker at the Strategic Air Command Base, he convenes a National Security Council briefing. As 4 o'clock approaches, Karen Hughes, the president's spokesperson, briefs reporters.
The Secretary of Defense remains at the Pentagon, and the Secretary of State is en route back to Washington.
At 5:21, as people around the country struggle to absorb what's happened, a third building at the World Trade Center, damaged by the attacks, collapses. The 47-story building had been evacuated. But once again, the concrete canyons of Lower Manhattan fill with the sounds of sirens and the sight of people fleeing for their lives. The world was watching and responding.
Terrorists bring war.
World leaders reacted swiftly.
This mass terrorism is the new evil in our world today. It is perpetrated by fanatics who are utterly indifferent to the sanctity of human life.
UN Secretary General Kofi Annan.
We are all traumatized by this terrible tragedy.
Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat condemns the attack, calling it a terrible act. In the streets of the Arab world, extremists celebrate. Last night, Air Force One, escorted by 2 fighter jets, returns President Bush to Washington, where he brands the attacks evil and despicable, vowing that America will win the war against terrorism. The #1 suspect, Osama bin Laden, a radical Islamic terrorist linked to past attacks on American interests. Mr. Bush makes a thinly veiled threat of reprisal against bin Laden's backers in Afghanistan, where he is based.
We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them.
A newspaper in Pakistan says it's received a message from Osama bin Laden saying he was not involved. The Taliban-ruled government of Afghanistan condemns the attacks. As to bin Laden's suspected role, Senator Orrin Hatch tells the Associated Press that the U.S. intercepted communications between bin Laden's supporters discussing targets that were hit, and that at least one of the suspected hijackers had known ties to the terrorist. But the 2 hijacked planes that toppled the World Trade Center both originated in Boston, where this morning the Boston Herald reports that authorities have identified at least 5 Arab men as suspects, one of them a trained pilot, and that a car filled with Arabic language flight training manuals was found at Logan Airport's central parking garage. Today, 1 day after the deadliest terrorist attack on American soil, a nation has learned a terrible lesson. Things will never be the same again. America is vulnerable, and the unthinkable does happen.